planning analyst in the planning division. This is the staff hearing officer meeting of April 8th, Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. I'm going to go ahead and, so this is our first remote webinar, and so thank you for bearing with us. We've been doing some test audio and instruction for the applicants. You are more than welcome to contact me, and we are just going to, there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but Susie, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you to start the meeting. And similar to, I will be explaining how public comment works as we, before each project. So I'll make sure that if we have any members of the public, that we will give you the opportunity to raise your hand virtually and participate in public comment on a specific item. So Susie, if I may hand it off to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, I'm Susie Reardon, the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, April 8th to order. The first item on our agenda is any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or ex-agenda items, and I haven't had any, so we will hear the items in the order they appear on the agenda. And I hope everyone's in attendance right now in regards to the applicants, because usually if they're not there, I will skip over them, but we'll just see what goes today. Under announcements and appeals, I've had no recent appeals, and I don't have any announcements to make. So now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on today's agenda. And if there's anyone out there who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda, you can use the little raise your hand function. And I don't know, Ellen, if you see anyone.
I'm looking through the list right now. I do not see anyone who has raised their hand for items not on the agenda. So you may continue, Susie.
Okay, great, thank you. So I close that portion of the agenda. And so we'll move on to the first item, which is a continued item from March 25th. It's 1964 Las Canoas Road. And if the applicant is present, if they could be added. And the staff person, if they would like to give the staff presentation, what we'll do is we'll do it like a normal hearing. Staff will give the presentation. And if I have questions, I'll ask them of the staff at that time. And then the applicant team is then able to give their presentation. And I will ask them any questions I may have, and then we'll move on to public comment, and then I'll deliberate. So with that, Michelle, if you're there, if you would like to give the staff presentation and turn on your camera so that I could see you. Great, thank you.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can see you fine and hear you.
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, good morning. Michelle Bedard, Associate Planner for the project 1964 Las Canoas Road. The project is a 35-acre site located within the extreme foothill high fire hazard area, and currently is developed with a residential rehabilitation treatment center. The proposed project involves construction of a new 325 square foot detached accessory structure, along with associated improvements to the fire sprinkling system. Other site alterations include associated landscaping, irrigation, and grading. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer is a front yard modification to allow a detached accessory structure located within the remaining front yard. So if you can see the plans, if the person presenting the plans can go to the page 2, the second PDF page, and scroll down a little bit, you'll see, perfect. Oh, go back a page. That's the first.
You're
Okay,
talking C101, right?
That should be
Yes.
page 2.
Yes, page C101. I have my little key here. That is the zoomed in area. You can see the large site map, or excuse me, the small site key map above, showing the overall 35-acre site. And then the larger area below is the rectangle area to the southwest portion of the site, showing the proposed area of scope of work. The area to the at the top left portion of the corner of the site is the proposed new construction. Yeah, right there. And then the area shown at the opposite corner on this page is improvements to the existing site facilities. So if you can scroll to the next page. Yeah, that's an overall of the entire site, again, showing 35-acre parcel with the area scope of work at the bottom southwest portion of the parcel. Scroll the next page, page 4. That's the proposed elevation of the proposed new 325 square foot accessory structure. Actually, and if you could go back to page 2, the overall site plan that showed the proximity of the area of the scope of work in relation to the property lines. Yes, that page, thank you. The setbacks and the area of this proposed scope of work. We'll just stay on that page for a few moments. That'd be great, thank you. So as I said, the discretionary application for this project is a front yard modification to allow the construction of a detached accessory structure to be located within the front yard. This is a single residential zone parcel, and the 35-acre site, a large portion of the parcel is remaining front yard. So staff is supportive of this proposed project because the location of the proposed improvement is not publicly visible from the street, given the site topography, the proposed site landscaping, and the proposed site grading. It will be screened from public view. The project has been reviewed by the Architectural Board of Review, and they were supportive of the proposed project and felt that it was sufficiently screened from public view. It was reviewed twice by ABR. The excuse me. We do have a condition for environmental review. The site is located within an archaeological sensitive area. Given the prior scope of work and projects, we just made a recommendation that the project be subject to the standard archaeological discovery finding. And then let me just say, let's see. With that, yes, staff recommends this recommends the approval of this front yard modification and is available for any additional questions you may have. I think I covered all I need to cover, I hope.
Great, thanks. Yes, you did, Michelle. I don't have any questions for you right now. Is the applicant there? Can they click on their webcam? And if they want to state their name for the record and provide any additional comments?
So this is Ellen Kokenda, staff. Heidi, if you are able to unmute yourself, you should be able to talk. I also have a couple other people here that also wish to speak, but Heidi, if you want to, let me see if I can unmute you. So Heidi, at this point, you should be able to click the little microphone circle icon right below the orange arrow box to unmute yourself.
Does she have a webcam or no?
She doesn't, I don't see a webcam, but Heidi, if you can just click okay, it looks like, can you test it, Heidi?
I'm here, can you hear me?
Yes, if go ahead and with your presentation.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all your faces. I think Michelle covered the project and scope pretty clearly. It's pretty straightforward. You know, essentially this is a replacement of the existing domestic fire and sprinkler system and water supply lines for the site. Much needed infrastructure and protection for a very severe high fire area. We think the proposed pump house is necessary and supportable and appropriate. It will be screened nicely with some landscaping, and based on the site topography It shouldn't be visible, as Michelle mentioned. The site has a very large front yard, as you can tell. So we think that the staff report and conditions and findings are all acceptable and appropriate. We hope the mod is supportable. As Michelle mentioned, we went to ABR twice. They are supportive of the design elements and the requested mod. And as outlined in my applicant letter, we think that all of the required findings can be made for the modification. And then we'll pass it on to our design team to quickly go over any elements of the plan that they feel should be covered.
Okay.
Heidi, can you please be specific of who you're passing the mic to? I think I had listed Robert Schmidt as second. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Martha DeGassis is also on our team, our landscape architect, and then Rosa Alvarado. So I think Robert will take the lead, and then Martha and Rosa can chime in as needed.
Okay,
Okay,
so
yeah, and
this is,
When they begin to speak, if they could just state their name so we know who's talking.
Can you
Robert.
guys hear me? This is Robert Schmidt with Powers and Associates. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, how do you spell your last name?
Schmidt, SCHMIDT.
Okay, thanks. Just, I can hear you. Go ahead.
And I'll be really brief. I think, Michelle, you covered it really well. This sheet's a good sheet to kind of just describe from the engineering standpoint. Really how this thing works is there's a main line in Los Canoas. We put the fire pump house away from the site. So the road going to the pump house is just a gravel base road. Fire department's looked at this and has approved the location and our design intent to this. The line that goes up kind of is on the southeast corner, or on the, let's say, the bottom right corner. There's a line that goes up the hill. That's just the main line that gets up to the top of the hill where the buildings are. The one other thing to note is there is some grading around where the pump house goes. Really, to help screen it, we're putting a mound in front of it to help a little bit more of the screening to it, and we're just tucking it into the hill a little bit. So overall, it balances out from a grading perspective from an earthwork quantity. I'm going to keep it simple, but if you have questions, I can definitely help you on that too.
I do. Heidi had mentioned it's a replacement system. Is there an existing pump on the site? And where is it if there is?
There's an existing pump and it's right at the entrance. So if you go to
Okay.
kind of the bottom center.
That's what I
it's
reviewed
very-
a couple years ago.
Yeah, it came in like 2008, but what we
Yeah.
found is it's well under what the current code looks for pressure. And so
Uh-huh.
we're going to keep that. We're going to use that actually for the domestic. So let's say if we need water for a domestic, it's a dual system. So it's all one system. For smaller flows for your typical usage, that's the pump that would use. But if we need fire protection, the pump house would kick on.
Okay, and then why did you choose to place it over in this area versus closer to the existing one?
If you zoom into there, it's actually really constrained. That's at the entrance, and there's that pump house was actually built into the road right adjacent to the hill. Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
And there wasn't enough room to get a full pump into that one. So we were going to use that for the existing pumps, but then we had to find a flatter area that there is some oak trees at the entrance. We were trying to be good without knocking into some of the other constraints that are, part of the site. So you can see
Okay.
the slope going up that roadway itself.
Yeah, and it appears that it is kind of in an existing quote unquote flat area right? You don't have to remove any trees, or I guess Martha's going next. She can explain that.
It is a flat area, but Martha can talk more about that.
Okay, great. So that's all my questions for you. Martha?
Hi. So morning, everyone. Martha DeGasis with Arcadia Studio Landscape Architects. And as Robert mentioned, we're doing a little bit of just auxiliary planting just for ornamental at the entrance because it's a little bit bare on either side of the drive. So we're putting some native plants around there just to enhance. And then as one goes up this gravel road, the grading again provides some additional screening. Although the site is barely visible from the road, And so this existing flat area remains, and then a bit of grading to tuck it into the hillside. And then upon that grading, we're putting native plants, some toyon, coffee berry, and some California lilac for erosion control planting. And then on the little mound that is below the proposed pump house, we're adding oak trees and for additional screening and some toyon and so on. If you would scroll down to some of the sheets past this sheet, you'll see we have some, and keep going, please. You'll see that we have some,
Hope you just passed it.
no, that's okay. That was irrigation. And then we've got some simulations.
Oh, I see.
So here's our planting plan. You can see it's densely planted with screening shrubs and ground cover California lilac. And then we do have some colored plans that show simulations of views from the road that we've taken Google Earth photographs and then done our photo sims of what the screen planting will be in about 5 to 7 years. And let me correct that, probably 15 years for the trees, but the shrubbery will grow quite a bit faster. So we feel that the site is completely screened and adequately screened. ABR was very happy with the approach and satisfied with the level of screening. The property's not really visible from adjacent residential areas, so we feel that it's well hidden.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't have any questions for you right now, Martha. Is there
Okay.
anyone else on your team that wanted to provide comments, or is that it?
So again, this
Heidi?
is Ellen Kokinda, staff. I just wanted to say that Rosa Alvarado who has not entered her audio PIN number. I've sent her several requests to do that. If you can unmute yourself, or if you, I don't know if she wishes to speak, but,
She's part of the
we
applicant
tested
team?
it out. Yeah, she was part of the applicant team, and
Okay.
or if Robert,
This is Heidi here. I don't think that Rosa necessarily needs to say anything or add anything. We're just here if you have questions.
Okay.
okay.
right,
Thank you. I
thanks.
just want to, I want to instruct Rosa, if there are questions, you should leave the webinar, or Timmy, if you want to clarify this, but you need to enter the audio PIN that I've sent you. So please, I don't want to interrupt the meeting anymore. Go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. So with that, I'll move to public comment. If there's anybody out there who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1964 Las Canoas Road, if you want to raise your hand, and either Timmy or Ellen will acknowledge you and unmute you. If you do, you have 2 minutes to address the staff hearing officer. And given the forum that we're doing this in, we don't allow the pooling of time. So you would be limited to your 2 minutes. So Ellen or
So-
Timmy?
This is Ellen. No one has raised their hand for this particular item, so you can keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing and move on to my deliberations. I remember this project back when I reviewed it, and I guess it was 2008. I didn't realize it was so long ago, when the existing pump house was proposed. And if you want to turn it back to the main site plan, Jimmy, that would be good.
That was PDF page 2.
Then, yeah, so the next one, yeah. This is the weird part where I don't have any controls to touch it or not. I do have the big set here beside me, and I have the photos that were submitted to look at. But in regards to the project and the siting of the new pump house, I agree with staff's analysis that given the size of the property, it's virtually impossible to get a location that is not in the front yard, and it is necessary to have these types of facilities towards the public right-of-way and easily accessible by the fire department. So I understand the location proposed and the necessity of it. And I think the applicant team did a really good job of trying to screen it. In addition to the fact that it's such a large distance away from the public right-of-way, I think it was 160 feet from the edge of the front property line. So it is set back quite a distance. And so I believe that it is consistent with the general purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance, and that it won't affect the visual openness of the streetscape. And so I can make the findings, but I would add just the additional comment that it's not going to impact the visual openness of the street, and make those findings as amended. And then in regards to the conditions of approval, Heidi, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
You've read the condition and you understand it and you're fine with it?
That's correct.
Okay, and I don't need to add any other additional conditions to be able to make the findings and to ensure the consistency with the zoning ordinance. So with that, I'll approve your project, subject to that condition of approval. And my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. But I would like to note that generally appeals are filed at our planning counter at 630 Garden Street, and they are closed right now due to the COVID-19. Everybody's sheltering at home. So if there's someone out there who wishes to appeal this project, please email the case planner, Michelle Bedard, and CC Danny Cotto at the email would be, I'll give you Danny Cotto's. It's DKATO at santabarbaraca.gov, because we are not taking appeals in person. And it's my understanding we're not taking them by the regular mail either. It would be by email. So they will direct you how to appeal it if that's necessary. But since we've had no interest in the public hearing part of this, I'm sure that won't happen, but I just wanted to let people know who are out there. So with that, I approve the project subject to those conditions of approval. Heidi and your team, you can click off and we'll move on to the
Thank
next
you.
item. Sure. Which is 29 South Milpas. So if see you later, Michelle. Thanks. So Tony, if you're on there, and then applicant team, make sure you're ready when you get called on.
This is Tony Bauman. I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Yeah. Anytime you're ready.
Oh, okay. Good morning, Ms. Reardon. I'm the case planner assigned to this project. It's 29 South Milpas Street, known as Santa Barbara Plaza Shopping Center.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute?
Sure.
The reason why you don't have your webcam on, because you don't have a webcam, correct?
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to let people know why you're not showing
yes.
up on here.
Yep.
That's fine. That's okay. Go ahead. Oh, there's the applicant.
And Timmy, if you could help go to the second sheet of the plans, I believe the site plan, or this one, that's good. So a little bit of background, this site plan shows the entire shopping center, and there's a larger project going on for a new grocery store tenant improvement and a whole new parking lot, all new parking lot landscaping. And this application that's the subject of the hearing now is kind of a spin-off of the larger project, because the applicant separated out the parts of the big project that required modifications. So the work's going on. You may have seen it when you did a site visit, all the work that's going on, the new parking lots in for the main part of the parking lot. And Mr. Poirier conveniently provided dashed lines around the scope of the work on this site plan for what we're looking at today. So there's 3 separate modifications requested or needed to accomplish the objectives of the project. So I'll just go one by one through them as they are in the staff report. So the first one is a parking modification. The existing shopping center is non-conforming to the zoning parking requirement. The requirement would be 168 spaces, but the shopping center only has 149 spaces. So part of the grocery store tenant improvement is an agreement to provide cart corrals for their shopping carts to keep those kind of organized. And that involved just finding space for those shopping cart corrals involved eliminating 4 parking spaces. And those are shown kind of in the middle front of the parking lot outlined where the 4 parking spaces would be converted to the cart corrals. So a reduction of the parking spaces that are non-conforming to begin with requires a parking modification. City transportation planning staff looked at it and did an analysis of the parking demand, and that's Exhibit E in your staff report, and they concluded the parking demand would be 139 spaces. The applicant had Mr. Shell at ATE provide a parking demand study, shared parking demand study, and that concluded a daytime peak demand of 134 spaces and an evening peak demand of 135. And since the project is proposing the equivalent of 145 spaces, we find that it meets the demand for parking and therefore a parking modification is supportable. And there's a little asterisk, I guess you could say, next to the 145 provided because Title 30 zoning ordinance allows motorcycle spaces to be substituted for auto spaces. So the proposal is to have 4 motorcycle parking spaces provided, which is the equivalent of 2 auto spaces. So we've got the equivalent of 145 proposed. So I think that's all I need to say about that mod. So moving on, the project's also requesting a setback modification for some parking spaces. And this is outlined kind of in the lower right side of the parking lot. That property line curves around because that's kind of where it's adjacent to the Milpas Street roundabout at the corner of South Milpas and Carpinteria Street. But there's some parking spaces that face up against Carpinteria Street. The existing spaces for the entire parking lot are angled. That was one thing this project did was convert all the parking spaces to 90 degree. So in that dashed area or outlined area facing Carpinteria Street, there were 5 angled spaces that would be reconfigured to provide 6 90-degree spaces. And you could see, I'm sure you can see on your large set of plans, but also on the site plan, you can see a dashed line kind of running through the front of the parking spaces. That's the required 10-foot setback line. The project's located in the CR, commercial restricted zone, that has a 10-foot front setback, unlike most commercial zones. So the existing spaces and the proposed spaces encroach about the same amount into the front setback. Timmy, do you have handy the photo board for this project? Yeah, that's it. Oh, right there. The upper left photo on this page shows that view from Carpinteria Street, looking across Carpinteria Street at those parking spaces, and they're pretty well hidden behind an existing site wall, and there's some landscaping inside and outside of the wall before you get to the front of the parking spaces. So they're pretty well screened, not really any visual change to the public. So staff finds that modification to be supportable. Moving on to the third modification, and we can stay right here on the same page of the photos. The project proposed a facade overhaul to the building for the entire length of the shopping center, and they would like to propose some improvements to the Jack's Bagels tenant space. And similar to the encroachment of those parking spaces, the existing building encroaches into the front setback, 10-foot setback along Carpinteria Street. And they would like to provide a gable roof at the Jack's Bagels tenant space. So while we're on the photograph, the upper right picture shows that front corner of Jack's Bagels, and you can see the sign on the front of the building. That front facade of that building would become a gable roof rather than hip roof. So it wouldn't hip back from the front above the sign. The gable would go straight up above the sign. And where that gable end comes down toward Carpinteria Street represents about a 5.5 or so foot increase in height to that existing roof within the setback. So that exceeds the limitation for a minor zoning exception, and it requires a setback modification. Now we could go back to the plans, if you wouldn't mind, Timmy, and we can go to, got a sheet number. It's one of the colored elevation sheets. Sheet A3.1C. It's like the 7th page of the PDF. Shows the proposed roof elevations. So, okay. So we could look at the top elevation drawing, the south elevation, and again, Mr. Poirier outlined it for us, the change. So there you can see in that outline the proposed gable roof. And the ABR liked this and gave favorable comments, and said it's a good architectural solution. They liked the design. So staff, because it is, I mean, it's not necessarily or necessary, but because it is a design favored by the ABR, staff can recommend approval of this setback modification as well. I think that concludes my presentation for now. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I didn't notice in my set of plans any existing conditions plans, like existing elevations or existing site plans. Was there any submitted, or did we have some?
Well, let's see. Existing elevation drawings.
Yeah.
There
Or
are,
There's a photo. There's a
Just the
photo
photos?
of it.
Okay.
well, there are. It's up to a previous drawing. It kind of, well, it does show a comparison on sheet A3.1, which is page 6 of the PDF. It just shows the partial east elevation. You can see indication of the line of the existing hip roof at that end. That elevation is a little confusing for some people to read because it really foreshortens kind of half of the length of the entire shopping center. So many of those roof forms that you see are far in the background. But again, with the outline, the dashed line outline, within that you can see 2 little lines that show the line of the existing hip roof.
Yeah, correct. I saw that. I was just wondering if there was a separate plan. That's fine. Okay, that's all the questions I have, Tony.
Okay.
If the applicant team would like to do additional comments, just make sure you state your name so we know who's talking. And then if you have a webcam, that would be good. So Paul.
I think I'm here. Can you guys see
Yeah.
me and hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so started doing this project to solve some of the problems at this center. We looked at reconfiguring the parking lot, and we went to the ABR with our elevation design and our site plan design, make all of the parking 90 degree. And Sprouts was interested in moving in to open a grocery town that's underserved by grocery tenants. And the ABR loved the plan. When the planners looking at the actual setbacks and the existing non-conforming lot being within the 10-foot setback and the existing building being within the 10-foot setback, some of the things that we propose on our initial design concept were going to cause problems in terms of needing a modification. So we started this maybe 3 years ago. So we proceeded to take those things out of the plan so we can get the project under construction. And then we would find out if the city would support those. We could continue with the project as is and leave angled parking along Carpinteria Street, but it just makes that parking sort of odd and less convenient for people to pull in from either direction. The efforts were really to make circulation in that historically problematic parking lot because of that the aisles were configured, and they had 4 one-way aisles pointed toward the building and 2 one-way aisles going away from the building. So a lot of congestion right along the front of the storefront. But now we have 2-way 90-degree parking aisles everywhere, which I think will alleviate the bottlenecks and people be able to circulate freely through the lot. Another thing that we did do was there's a little correction in the staff report on page 3. We are consolidating 3 existing tenant spaces into 1 tenant space for Sprouts. So there was Trader Joe's, Petco, and Santa Barbara Tobacco, I think it was, a little cigar shop. So those 3 tenants have conglomerated into be 1 tenant for Sprouts. There still will be 4 tenants in the shopping center: Rite Aid, Jack's, Sprouts, and Carl's Jr. So there's 4 tenants there from being 6 tenants. So it's like the 3rd line down under V discussion. So that's why we're proposing these things. And again, it's not mandatory that we alter the tax. We just think it would look better and give them a little more prominence in terms of space around their sign. Their sign's a little crowded on the elevation, and the building's looking great right now. With the remodel going on, it's going to be a nice gateway project for the city. I know the owners are very proud of that property, and they want it to be a nice gateway center for the city as well. They're spending a lot of money to make it really nice. We didn't want to just leave that area alone. If you can go to A3.1, which was the black and white elevation, and look at that upper right elevation there. So it's ironic that the peak of the roof is not in the setback and would be conforming to the 42-inch increase it's allowed without a mod. And just the shaded areas are the areas that would exceed 42 inches. Basically, there's no overhang from the gable right now or from the eave. So we're pushing that out a little bit to make a little shadow line. And so that causes us problems because the height technically is 0 where a roof doesn't exist. And if we extend it past the front of the building, it's what it is. It's more than 42 inches high. And the 10-foot setback line isn't really at the ridge. It's partially up the side of the sloping roof, and we're just matching the slope of the existing roof. So it's a little teeny tiny part of the roof that's really needs the mod. And regarding the car corrals, we did take out 1,000 square foot mezzanine that was being used by Petco. And so that 1,000 square feet parked at 1 to 250 is subtracting, if you use logic, reducing the demand by 4 parking spaces as well. And then as part of our reconfiguration, we took out a drive aisle that didn't have any parking on it. That was in the middle of the parking lot. We were able to bring 10 or 11 parking spaces from the back of the shopping center and move it out into the front parking field, which I think will alleviate the demand as well. So a lot of the things that we've done to the center are going to make it function a lot better for the neighborhood and the community, as well as providing a space for an amenity for that part of town. That's about all I have. Any questions? We have Scott Shell here to answer any questions about the traffic study that he did that concurred with what Public Works came up with. And the owner, I think, is on the line too, if you have any questions about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. I don't have questions per se on the traffic or on the parking study. I understand it, but just on experience, and I don't know if you or Scott wants to respond to this, but when Trader Joe's was in there, parking was a mess. You know, it's always impacted, and the demand study indicates that there's actually going to be more than enough parking to meet the demand. is it more so the location of where the parking was provided, or what? Can one of you guys speak to that? I know you had mentioned that you are relocating some existing parking that was towards the back of the site and putting it up front, but could either you or Scott respond?
I'll answer a little bit and then Scott could chime in, but I think that
Okay.
we built a proper loading dock in the back for grocery trucks to be able to pull in, to get in and offload in a truck dock situation.
Uh-huh.
And by going to 90 degrees in the front lot and eliminating that drive aisle that didn't have any parking off of it, we were able to actually get more parking pushed from the back to the front where people need to use it. It was total mayhem in the front when Trader Joe's was there with the angle
Yeah.
parking. And it was because also unequal directions with 4 one-way aisles going to the front and only 2 going away from the building. Everyone was jamming up right where everyone's trying to walk out of Trader Joe's with a cart full of groceries or in front of Rite Aid, trying to get to the open space when there was one. And it did like an unbound in terms of getting to a space that was open, people be coming at it from 3 directions. So this way, by going to 90 degree, people can arrive, people can leave as they came. I don't reduce bottlenecks to get out, the bottlenecks to get in. And I don't know if you want to talk to that, Scott.
So Scott, this is Ellen Kokinda, staff. If you just unmute yourself by clicking on the circle microphone icon underneath the orange, you should be able to go ahead.
Yes, thank you for unmuting me. I think this is Scott Shell with Associated Transportation Engineers. I'm on phone and not audio because I don't have a webcam here at my computer. I would agree with Paul's assessment. I think that the previous experience at the shopping center was the configuration of the lot that really led to a lot of circulation and parking issues, and going from the one-way aisles to this new two-way 90 degree is really going to clean that up. And totally concur with Paul that, bringing that parking from the back to the front is really going to help as well. Not a lot of customers would go back there and park, so it really increases our demand supply up front by 10% or so.
Okay, great,
And
thanks. That what? Sorry, I cut you off.
I think the other thing, Susie, that Scott and I were chatting about was if we don't have a place to put the carts in the parking lot and they're left stray around in the parking lot by people that aren't responsible for returning them to the inside of the store, that also creates spaces that people can't pull into. So by putting them in car corrals, it's going to centralize those things and keep all of the parking available, hopefully, and minimize the tendency for people to just stick them on the end of a planter and block traffic and that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. I agree with that. Okay, yeah. The other question, or just a question, was some of this property taken for the Milpas roundabout, or was it not impacted?
Some property was taken, but when they took some property, it mostly ended up outside of the wall for the parking lot. So it didn't cause us to relocate the wall, the 42-inch that surrounds the parking lot, or the parking lot configuration. So we're leaving that perimeter wall where it is. We're leaving the monument sign wall where it is. But we have a permit to change the logo for the whole center and up that wall. They did reduce the planter in front of the monument sign to accommodate it about, and I think that radius got pushed closer to our property. So we had planting on the outside of the wall before.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. All right, so that's my questions for right now. I'd like to open the public comment. If there's anybody out there who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 29 South Milpas, raise your hand, and Ellen will call on you in the order that she has them.
Right now, no one has raised their hand for this item. So please continue.
Okay. All right, so I'll close the public hearing. I'll move on to comments. So I'll start in regards to the alterations for the roof, requested modification to the alterations for the roof. This is a commercial property, but it does require front setbacks, and it's it's an existing site that the setback or the building encroaches into the setback. And changing the roof height is not going to change anything per se from the street frontage. The building wall's still going to be there. It's just additional height. And I think, in my opinion, staff had suggested the finding would be for an appropriate improvement, which it is an appropriate improvement, but I think it more promotes the uniformity of improvement on the site. It provides a nice facade for the portion of the building that faces Milpas Street. So in regards to the supportability, that is supportable. I would just change the reference that it's a uniformity of improvement. In regards to the setback request to allow the changes in the configuration of the parking and the additional parking space in the front setback, I again believe that is an appropriate improvement on the lot. It is adequately screened with the existing wall and the landscaping. And there is a trade-off, although I don't know it's really a trade-off per se because you can't see the parking space. But you know, this type of use in this area, it's important to provide for the parking on site. So any additional parking you can get is a bonus. So that is a supportable improvement. And I would just beef up the finding that the modification would allow for an additional parking space and that there is no potential adverse impacts to the street frontage given the wall and the landscaping and that. In regards to the parking modification, I'm glad you guys, Scott and Paul, explained it more because I understand the parking study and the shared use of the parking lot and you know, different demand times and that kind of thing. But I also have visited Trader Joe's when it was there originally, and the parking lot was a mess. And I'm glad to see that the parking configuration is changing to try to address that and to make it easier for people to find places to park. And I think also that people are creatures of habit and they want to park in front of the store. So yeah, maybe those parking spaces that was towards the back weren't used as much. So in regards to the parking modification, based on the information that was provided by our parking or the city's parking staff, as well as the shared parking study for ATE, I can make the finding. And again, I would kind of change the finding just to recognize the fact that the parking modification, that the 143 vehicle parking spaces and the 4 motorcycle parking spaces is adequate to meet the anticipated demand. And so with that, I'll make those revised findings. Paul, you saw the condition that was proposed by staff and you understand it?
Yes, I went out there this morning to go look at that stuff, and I think we can just increase the height of the parapet to screen all of that equipment along Carpinteria Avenue. And I talked to the owner about it right before this call. And so we're going to work with the ABR to get all that stuff screened appropriately in addition to the work that we're doing. And it looks like we don't need to ask for a modification to do that. If we just add 42 inches to the top of the existing 12-inch parapet, we should be able to screen everything and we can step it down as we get to the northeast corner of the building, because there's some equipment over there that's a little bit lower.
Okay, great, thank you. And I don't need to add any additional conditions to make those revised findings. So I will approve your project subject to the condition of approval. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion, they'd call it up, or they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. In regards to the appeal, as I stated on the first project, we're not accepting appeals in person or by regular mail, that we will accept them through email. So if you or an interested party wanted to appeal this decision, you can email a staff planner, and the email contact information is in the staff report and on your notice you received. But it's T. Bowman, and I'll spell that for you, BOUGHMAN at santabarbaraca.gov. And so that would still need to be within that 10-day calendar appeal period. And so with that, you have an approval.
Thank you. And thank you, Tony, for getting to this. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So then now we'll move on to the next item. If the applicant team for 1431 Olive Street is ready, we will start off first with Megan Arsena. She's the planner for this project.
And this is
Good morning.
Timmy Bolton staff real quick. I need to load some photos that were sent to me. So if you could just bear with me for 1 second on that.
Sure.
And in the meantime, this is Ellen Kokinda. Brett, if you could mute your microphone by clicking on the microphone icon underneath the orange arrow on your control panel. And when Susie asks you to present, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you. Perfect.
I can begin describing the project if you like, unless Timmy, you'd like me to hold off.
No, go for it. I'll jump in and I'll get it up in just a second.
Sure. Go ahead, Megan.
So the project that we're looking at today at 1431 Olive is a request for a reduction in open yard. So residential development requires some open yard area for outdoor residential use, you know, to have a lawn or a barbecue, just have some outdoor living space that functions on the property. The project involves also the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit, which we know the state law has encouraged the construction of accessory dwelling units. The city implemented our own ordinance last year in 2019, sorry. And then since then, the state law was revised and a new state law was enacted in January 2020 that then made our city ordinance null and void. The project that we have before us was actually designed prior to the 2020 state law coming into effect, and it was designed to be compliant with the city's 2019 ADU ordinance. So it met all the size limitations and it provided open yard, the 800 square feet, of open yard that was required at that time. Since then, the state law came into effect and now our ordinance is null and void. So the project actually has to comply with the current, well, it kind of retracts our open yard standards and requiring them to provide 1,250 square feet of open yard, which it wasn't designed originally to do. Although the city is working to update our ordinance to comply with the 2020 state law and will be worked on potentially as soon as this summer, the applicant has asked to go forward with the current design because it's really only in the interim that this 1,250 square foot requirement applies, and they would like to continue moving forward with their application and hopefully move towards construction sooner than later. So the applicant is requesting a modification to reduce the open yard requirement so that they would only have to provide 800 square feet in lieu of the 1,250, which would be consistent with both the previous city ordinance and then our proposed ordinance that would possibly be coming into effect this summer. Just to kind of give you a rundown of the property, Timmy, if you don't mind putting up the photos really quick. Just the first photo is actually the street view of the house. So this is the house as it faces Olive Street. It's a deeper lot, so it's a single family house, single story. And then if you can go back to the site plan or the plans, that kind of shows the side view as the house goes into the lot. So the front porch you can see to the left in that rendering, and then the driveway would go down, and then the accessory dwelling unit would be constructed at the back of the house in conjunction with a new 2-car garage. So it's actually a combined 2-car garage with accessory dwelling unit beside it and above it. The new garage would be 400 square feet. The accessory dwelling unit would be 900 square feet. I also do want to point out that the garage is a benefit to the project because currently there's only a single car carport. It's existing non-conforming 1-car space. The project's proposing to demolish that existing carport and provide a 2-car garage, which is a benefit to the site. Although it's not a requirement, staff believes that that's a good amenity for the property. And on that note, I also want to just identify that no parking is required for the accessory dwelling unit itself. So the project meets zoning standards in terms of setbacks, parking, height, and all other standards. The only one it doesn't is the open yard requirement. And if you can go to the second page, Timmy, and kind of zoom in, if you will, on the upper right side of the site plan, you can kind of get into the configuration of the ADU. So here we have the ADU, which is a 2-bedroom, and the garage next to it. The proposed open yard area would be in front of the garage. You can see the permeable pavers that they're proposing, and that would meet the minimum dimensions and the 800 square feet that they are proposing to use as the open yard area. It should also be noted that this is the driveway. So as you can see, the driveway is now going to be reconfigured as a ribbon driveway. Currently, it's just a paved driveway. It will add additional stormwater capabilities, stormwater retention and treatment capabilities, and then you would follow it down to the driveway or the permeable paver areas and then park in the 2-car garage. Typically, I guess I should say in the past, open yard wasn't allowed to encompass driveway or drivable areas. That changed with the state law requirements for accessory dwelling units to encourage their development and allow greater flexibility for property owners. Driveways and vehicle areas are allowed to be used as open yard areas. For this particular configuration, staff does see that the configuration would work as an outdoor living space because it is nicely situated between the 2 structures and towards the back of the lot where it does offer some privacy. We think that the permeable pavers is a nice aesthetic. There's landscaping surrounding it. And then additionally, there's a little bit of a private open yard area for the ADU itself on the bottom right-hand corner of the site plan. So the configuration and the project meeting all potential future ADU requirements, staff is supportive of the open yard modification. I do also want to add that the project will be increasing stormwater retention areas. So the neighborhood has, or a couple neighbors have identified some existing drainage concerns in the area. And if Timmy, if you can zoom in a little more to the top right of the site plan. This upper right corner of the property has some drainage issues, and I'll allow the architect to go into greater detail as he's designed this system. But they are proposing a gravel bed and French drains that would then connect this area of the property to then pool or bring that drainage back to the permeable pavers and interior of the lot. And we're hoping that will actually solve some existing neighbor drainage issues. And then again, you can see the light landscaping and drought tolerant landscaping. And if you can just go to the other site, the next page. And the next one. So here's the layout of the second floor. And you can go to the next one. Just kind of wanted to flip through. So there will be an attachment between the 2, keep going to the next slide. Between the existing residence and the proposed ADU, keep going to the elevations. Currently they are, there we go. So if you can see the existing residence would be attached to the new proposed ADU via a bridgeway. And this would provide a little bit of a patio connection. We looked at the building code requirements and zoning requirements, and even though that element does physically connect the 2, it's not considered an attached ADU. It's still considered detached. To enable this to happen, there would be a minor demolition of the existing residence on the back of the property. And Timmy, if you can go to the photos, photo 7 of 9. That's a neighbor. There. That pop out that you see with the fish sculpture on it is a small, about 100 square foot area of the existing residence that would be demolished also as part of the project, in addition to the carport. That would allow additional space, and that's where that bridgeway would be. So there'd be minor alterations to the facade of the existing residence just to allow demolition of this and then construction of a new exterior door and that bridgeway connection. And if you can go one more, I think we can see just the yard area. And that's, I think, it for the presentation. I'll allow the architect to chime in with any other details that I think if there's anything I've missed.
Okay, thank you, Megan. I did have a question regarding sheet A 2.2. It's the upper floor plan, partial lower floor plan. It shows a roof deck for the ADU, and a portion of it is within the setback. And I don't see on my plans it dimensioned, but is it because it's 5 feet from the property line that's allowed to be in the setback per state law, or why is it in the setback and not identified as needing a mod?
So I don't think we cleaned up the setback lines on this sheet per se. So the ADU per state law actually has a 4-foot setback instead of 6 feet. And we cleaned that up on the site plan. Here it isn't. So that would be the setback for a main structure. The roof overhang is allowed, I believe, 24 inches. I can confirm that.
Okay, and what about the roof deck itself? I guess that could be confirmed during plan check and it would, if necessary, need to be reduced.
It just would need to be 4 feet back. But we can, and I believe it is. So that line is 6 feet.
I think that, yeah, okay, well, that's something maybe look at plan check, because my understanding, the 4-foot setbacks for the actual ADU, and this is just a roof deck. It's not necessary for the ADU. So under previously, the city's interpretation was that the roof deck would need to comply with setbacks.
Okay.
Not, so that might be something that would need to be checked in plan check.
Sure.
The other question is in the staff report, and you said in your presentation too, regarding our existing ADU ordinance, which is now null because of state law, but this unit was designed to meet the 800 square foot open yard. What was the size limitation for the ADU under Title 28? Is it consistent with what was allowed in Title 28, or was it increased once our ordinance went away?
No, so under the old ADU ordinance, the size limitation would have been 800 square feet. But under current state law, there's actually a requirement that jurisdictions not prohibit any, need to keep it at a minimum of 1,000 square feet. So the city's proposed new ordinance would basically allow 1,000 square feet minimum for an ADU and 800 square feet open yard. And this project complies with that. So we were guiding them to comply with our potential future ordinance.
So comply with, okay, all right, great, thank you. That was my question for right now. So is the applicant out there? If
Yes,
they would
I
like
am.
to, you want to turn on your webcam and state your name for the record?
Oh, I could do that. Let's see if that worked. There you
Yep,
go.
there you are.
Good morning. My name is Brett Ettinger, Ferguson Ettinger Architects. And I think that was a really thorough presentation by Megan. I don't have much to add other than to just give a quick little timeline. We did submit this project formally early summer 2019 and proceeded to Historic Landmarks Committee for conceptual review. We were giving very positive comments. And at that point in October, we moved forward to complete 100% of our construction drawings with the understanding that we had met all land use ordinance provisions for current ADU guidelines as designed by the city. And in early January, once our drawings were 100% complete, and you can see that level of completion in this set, it's a little beyond what you'd normally see for a modification hearing. We were told that our project, because of an unfortunate and ironic twist of state legislation, even though we met the minimum provisions for open yard, the state had temporarily null and voided, as Megan said, those provisions. And in the interim, we were told it would be until May, but now I'm understanding maybe summer before the city was able to update their particular ADU requirements. Our project would be put on hold for several months. And in an attempt to move forward, understanding that the future ADU guidelines would match the previous ADU guidelines of 800 square feet, we decided, in the interest of trying to get this project constructed, or at least watertight by this coming winter, to proceed in the most expedient manner, which is this right here, our request respectfully for approval of the reduced open yard area, which in fact is not reduced. It is what the city will be allowing for in the interim and in the future. I think the project was given really good comments. Design-wise, it will be a benefit to this really character-filled Bungalow Haven district by putting all the associated development in the rear where it's not even visible from the street. And we have addressed drainage concerns with the neighbor. I had met with them several months ago, and our client, Matt Davis, is also a civil engineer, has met with them on numerous occasions. It should be noted that there have been no issues, drainage issues, from this lot for the time that our client has lived there for 15 years. We're merely improving and implementing about 5 or 6 of the tier 2 measures and going, a very conservative approach here to make sure that all development, we're increasing the permeability of the site and implementing on-site stormwater retention measures as already listed. So we think we have a good project, and we're again respectfully requesting approval of our reduced open yard area. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't think I have any questions for you right now. Yeah, no, I don't. Okay, so then we'll go to the public hearing portion of it. If there's anybody out there that would like to address
that, but it sounds like we've got Susie back. So Susie, why don't you go ahead and go through with your decision so we can at least get it on the record, and we're going to have to work on that a little bit later. Hopefully it won't happen again.
Yeah, that's interesting. Ellen, has it happened at the other boards that used this so far, or not that you know of?
No, I've actually never seen this before. So it sounds like it wasn't anything that the organizers did. It just seems like the GoToWebinar just cut off your audio for some reason. So we could still have everybody's video who was up. But it happened to you, it happened to another staff person, and to the applicant Brett as well. So unclear why. But I'm gonna hand it back over to you. It sounds like we've got, we can continue.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ellen. Okay, I don't know where it got dropped off from. But
I can, if you could just please start your, you were about ready to go into your decision. So we really didn't get to hear the rationale for your decision at all.
okay, and you didn't hear my talk about the findings or anything?
No, we didn't hear any of that. If you could, I know we
Okay.
tried to stop you.
You
And
cut
also I
out,
looked up, and
Right,
the
right,
That's why they say you should look up, huh? But,
Mhm.
all right, okay, so I'll start over. So in regards to the open yard area, so if I'm repeating myself, sorry. In regards to the open yard area, I know the code requires the 1250 square foot of open yard area for the single family unit, but you know, in regards to the ADU, our previous ordinance allowed for a reduction in it, and also allowed for the joint use of paved areas and parking areas for the open yard. Typically, that's not allowed in the single family zone, but in order to help encourage ADUs on these more constrained lots, it's allowed to overlap. Also in regards, this is the RM zone, correct? This is the one that was the multifamily. So if it was proposing and development that was consistent with the RM zone, either an ADU or base zone, I believe my reading of this, that it would meet the requirements of the M1 zone, RM zone. Is that correct, Megan? Or
No.
is it?
It actually wouldn't. It would still require modification because the standards are the same for single family as 2-unit. It would only be if it was a 3-unit.
Correct. Yes. Okay. In that instance, well, the RM zone, it requires for multi-unit development, it requires private outdoor space as well as open yard, you know, open areas 15% or wet. So in this instance, there is 2 areas that could be considered as private open yard area for the residents of these 2 units. And you know, like I said, in regards to our ADU ordinance and wanting to allow and encourage these types of units to increase our housing stock, it is something that could be supported in regards to the open yard mod. And then what I also was saying is typically I don't put acknowledgement of zoning requirements in the findings because you know, I like to have the reason why the project's consistent with zoning, you know, that discussion in there. So where the finding says, additionally, the proposed open yard complies with the open yard requirements in the city's previous and anticipated future ADU ordinance, that I don't know that that really necessarily needs to be in the finding. So I think it could just stand on its own in that the proposed open yard is appropriate because it provides a sense of openness and a useful space for outdoor living. So I would just strike that last sentence. Now the staff report doesn't propose any conditions of approval, and I don't need to add any conditions of approval to be able to make the finding. So I'll approve the project as submitted. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. And if either of those would happen or would occur, Megan would contact you. And I do want to note, like I noted on the previous two projects, that appeals, we are not taking them in person right now. It's just via email. So you would, if you were going to appeal this project, you need to email Megan Arcina, which is spelled, it's M and then ARCINIEGNA @SantaBarbaraCA.gov. Her email is also on the staff report and on the notice. And then if you can include her supervisor too, which is Danny Cato. And so that would be DKATO @SantaBarbaraCA.gov. So great, thank you. And
Thank you very much.
sure. So we'll move on to the last project, which is 2316 Cliff Drive. If the applicants out there would be ready to click on when called upon.
Hello, this is Ted Meter, the architect. I
Oh,
have
great,
no web.
thanks. No webcam, okay. Megan will go first with her presentation, and then I'll give you an opportunity to provide any additional comments you might want to do or provide.
Okay.
And
Go ahead, Megan.
if I'm part of my interruption, this is Ellen Kokinda. Ted, if you could please just mute yourself by clicking on the green microphone button. Thank you.
Again, I can open up. So my name is Megan Arciniega. I am the planner for the second project for at 2316 Cliff Drive. It's similar to the previous item in that it is also an open yard modification, a request to reduce the open yard requirement, again, at the rear of the yard to allow for construction of a new accessory dwelling unit. We similarly have a narrow, deep lot where the accessory dwelling unit would be constructed at the rear of the lot, currently in their yard area. Similarly, it includes demolition of an existing single-car carport and construction of a single-car garage with storage area inside the garage, and then the accessory dwelling unit on the second floor of that structure. The lot is currently developed with a 788 square foot single family residential unit and a 364 attached single car garage. Sorry, yeah, it's a garage that would be demolished. The new unit would be 495 square foot garage with a 482 square foot dwelling above it. The reduction of the open yard would be to reduce the requirement for an 800 square foot open yard to 500 square feet. This is consistent with the previous ordinance provisions for open yard area for lots that are smaller, under 5,000 square feet, which this is. The lot area is 4,938. The difference of this project is that the garage includes storage area in it, and typically that storage area is looked at separately from the garage space in terms of allowed encroachments into the open yard. So even if our previous ADU ordinance was in place, this would still require a modification, but for all intents and purposes, it's really the same use. Also, staff encourages or believes the use of garage storage space is appropriate for the lot and would be a good use for the existing and proposed unit. The parking, as I noted, is only a single car garage. That's consistent with the existing non-conforming parking on site. The ADU does not require its own separate space and is consistent with state law. And otherwise, the structure meets all setbacks, including the rear and interior setbacks. I don't think there's anything else to add to me. If you want to go to the photos. This is the residence from the front, so from Cliff Drive, and you can scroll through just a couple of those. It's a relatively tight lot, there's the existing single car garage, the side of it. Keep going. And then the rear of the property. Keep going. And then these are neighbor photos. And then if you can go back to the site plan and go to the second page, this shows the layout of the first floor, which would be the single car garage and adjacent storage, so including motorcycle storage, a sink and bathroom. And then the next page shows the layout of the unit. So there would be a wraparound walkway around the back of the unit and then stairs that would go up to the second floor. And then it would be a single bedroom unit. This one also includes a deck that would look out towards the main residence as well. Next page. Here's the roof plan, next page. And then there's the elevation. So you can see this is the 2-story structure that's proposed with the garage on the bottom. And that really concludes staff presentation for this one, if you have any questions.
Okay, thanks. No, I don't have any questions. Ted, if you want to click on and give your name for the record and provide any other comments.
Okay, I'm Ted Meter. I'm the architect for the project. Similar to the last one, we turned this application in last year with a fully developed set of structural and soils report and everything processed as if it were a building permit application. And then later we found out that there was a zoning or planning issue. My comment is that Ordinance 5734 allows on this size lot that an open space of only 500 square foot would be required, quote, in order to construct an accessory dwelling unit. The owner of this property really needs a garage for many reasons, and this project was developed with a new ADU over a garage. And the planning department and Danny Cotto have determined that although Ordinance 5734 says that the 500 square foot is allowable in order to construct an accessory dwelling unit, that they will look at this as 2 separate projects, and the garage itself still requires the 800 square feet as if there were no ADU. This project is never intended to construct just a garage. It was always a package deal ADU over the garage. If this project only included an ADU, then we would need no modification, and this footprint would be allowed with these setbacks in this open space. And the fact that there's a garage underneath it seems to have changed it, and that's why we're here today to ask for an open yard modification. So the net result to the neighborhood would be the same lot coverage if there were no garage in this project. And so we think it's a net benefit to have the covered parking and also the storage associated with the garage. I guess that's it. Yeah. Also that this project only requires the modification because of this interpretation that the city look at it as 2 separate planning proposals. And I understand the reason that is done is so that they can process ADUs applications within this 120-day or 60-day time limit prescribed by AB 68. I understand that, but that seems to be a benefit only to the city, and it seems to be it's an internal policy that's not found anywhere in the ordinance that this garage needs to be considered separately with its own open space requirement, separate from the project as a whole. So I don't believe that's supported by the ordinance. It's only done, according to Danny Cotto, as an internal policy suggested by the city attorney. So that's why we're requesting the modification to 500 square foot. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I understand your frustration with that, Ted. What I would recommend is as we're developing the new ordinance, now and in the summer, that you participate in that and provide comments and suggestions that would make the ordinance more clear. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm unmuted now. Yeah, I'm sure. I would love to have my thoughts known on the process. Really, though, we're just trying to take advantage of the 500 square foot open space reduction that was, I think, intended to help allow ADUs to be built, especially on lots that are this tight. It's one of the smallest lots I've ever seen in the city. We are not, we're really looking for the same end result that is already on the books in the ordinance of 500 square foot in order to construct an ADU. That's all.
Yeah, so I just suggest with all your experience in working on these projects that you just be a participant in the ordinance development so that we could address concerns and get them out there and talk about them. That's all. That would just be my suggestion to you. I mean, it's not going to help you in this project because this project's already on the way and, you know, that kind of thing. So we always encourage public participation when we develop ordinances, especially with people who have to work with them. So we have a better chance of having it be workful and benefit both sides.
Yeah, and I have learned a lot about the new ADU laws. One thing is that, you know, the new AB 68 that took effect on January 1st requires that no open space be required in order to construct an ADU. So there's not going to be any, if we were to resubmit this project right now with a smaller garage that met the 800 square foot, we could actually fill up the entire rest of the rear yard with ADU to a 4-foot setback line with no open space required. That's not preferable to the community. It's not preferable to the owner, but it may be our last resort because there's just no other way to get a 490 square foot ADU in this tiny back lot. So that's
Okay.
all for me.
All right, thanks. So I'd like to open the public comment. I have not received any emails or on this project. And so if there's anybody out there who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2316 Cliff Drive, if you could click on raise your hand and Ellen will call on you.
And Susie, I don't see anyone who has raised their hand for this item.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. So I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and the owner let me in the backyard and thank you. I appreciated that and looked at the site. This site, whether or not an ADU is proposed on it, is a highly constrained lot. It's significantly undersized. And so, as pointed out, it would need a modification anyways. And our previous ordinance and the state law encourages these types of developments, and it's a modestly sized ADU. 482 square feet net. And, you know, as Ted pointed out, that if it was just the straight ADU, it wouldn't require the modification, but the fact that there's a garage proposed for the single family home, then that triggers the modification. And I understand his frustrations with it all. But looking at the project that's proposed before me today, it is an appropriate improvement. The open yard there's an open yard provided that is usable and it's the intent of the ordinance. And there's also this existing front house is set back from the street. So there is some open yard area in the front of the house. The required setback here is 30 feet and the house is, you know, almost twice that setback, 35-ish feet. So there is adequate open yard area on the site to use for outdoor enjoyment. So I can make the finding outlined in the staff report. Staff's not proposing any conditions of approval, and I don't need to provide or to add any conditions of approval to be able to make the finding. So I will approve the project as submitted. And again, my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. They also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if either of those would happen, Megan would contact you, Ted. And again, we're not taking appeals in person, only via email. So if you would email the case planner, and that information is on the staff report as well as a notice, and include her supervisor, who is Danny Cotto, and you can email them and they'll let you know the process. All right, so thank you. I
Thank
adjourn
you.
the meeting.